Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are connecting from. So welcome to this session here for Azure User Group Sweden. My name is Håkan Silvernagel. I will be your host here today. So our founder, Jonah Anderson, is on vacation, so unfortunately she couldn't be with us today here. So let me go over here a little bit of practical details. So we have a code of conduct here. So it says, be nice and friendly, listen with purpose, and be thoughtful, be respectful to others, and seek to understand, not criticize, be curious and open to share ideas, and be inclusive in your comments or questions. And you can also find our full code of conduct on the link here below. And we are also always looking out for new speakers and new sessions. So please feel free to scan this QR code and register your interest for presenting a session. And finally, I would also like to invite you here for a small digital fika, which is a small Zoom meeting where you will be able to ask questions and discuss directly here with our speaker for today. So that brings us actually here to our speaker here. So let me welcome here on the stage, Dieter Gobeyn.
Hello, Hakan. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's very nice to be here. Yes.
So a small, more formal introduction is that Dieter is a Microsoft MVP for Azure, and he's an experienced IT architect and Azure consultant, and he specializes in creating end-to-end enterprise architecture that focuses on clarity, simplicity, and scalability. And Dieter shares his insight as a public speaker, drawing on his extensive consulting experience. He focuses on cloud solutions and enterprise integration, AI, and the valuable lessons learned from managing global teams in distributed environments.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Hakan.
So would you like to say a couple of words to our viewers about what they will see here today?
Yes. Absolutely. So the presentation, So the presentation today will be more about my own lessons learned from an insurance company I used to work for a few years ago. We were struggling with processing data, and there was lots of emails, lots of documents that we were receiving, and we really wanted to automate this process. Now, keep in mind, this was all before Gen AI, right? So this technology still exists and has been even better than a few years ago. The demo and the presentation, the slides from today will be really optimizing that, creating automation, but it's also an enterprise ready solution to be used managing millions of emails. So that's the subject for today.
Oh, nice. Yes, please share your presentation here, and I can add it to the
Perfect.
stage.
Thank you so much. Yep. So if you could just confirm you can see my screen, please.
Yes, it looks great. So the show is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. So yeah, quick agenda for today here. I'll introduce myself in a couple of minutes. We will be looking at linguistics technology. Sounds like a difficult word, but it's not, I promise you. The technology we will be using from Azure will be Azure AI Language Studio here. In the email triage or document classification. And then we will look into solutioning a demo, and there's questions as well. And as Hakan explained, feel free to raise those questions. And I can also adjust the demo if necessary. Let's see, maybe we can try to break the demo. Good. Quick introduction about myself. So as already introduced, I'm a developer, an Azure architect, and working with Azure since 2012. Feel free to connect here on this QR code with my socials. Would there be any questions? You're very welcome to follow up through LinkedIn, email, or any other social media. If I'm not doing tech stuff, such as reading books, blogging, presenting, you will likely find me outside. So hiking, scuba diving is one of my two hobbies. And I'm also based in London since a couple of years. Cool. Now, Azure AI Language Studio, right? So this is the linguistics that we want to talk about today. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of use cases with linguistic technology, and it exists already in quite a lot of places, right? I just want to provide a couple of examples where this could be useful for potentially your business, right? Or where it's already being used. First one being document digitalization, right? So any written document that potentially you would like to classify or digitalize rather than manually typing it over. AI linguistics technology is quite useful for that and can be used. Second example could be document categorization, right? In this case, we would like to categorize maybe the type of a document, the reason why it was made, the color scheme. Quite a lot of parameters could be extracted here. Potentially also some of the text. I'm not too sure how visible that is, but I guess you get the point. And as last example is personalized communication, and obviously with the chatbots and agents, we all want to speak in our own native language, right? And having access to language detection as a first instance is quite important, right? So think about routing it to the right agent, right? Or potentially sending it to the right person that they can answer, but also having a solution available in your own language or potentially dialect is quite important here. So these are all examples where we use linguistics technology today. And obviously the scope is beyond those examples, right? And then a quick introduction about linguistics technology, right? As a matter of fact, it's not very new. It existed already in the 1990s, and this is just one of the samples with a company that I knew back in the days. Some of the people I knew had stocks there. They bought stocks for this company. Now, and it was also used in 2001 with Windows XP speech option. So it's quite I wouldn't say an old technology, but it exists already about 30 years, right? Now, interestingly enough, the company went bankrupt a couple of years afterwards. Nuance Communication acquired that. But then the most important part is this. So when I saw this announcement a couple of years ago, Microsoft acquired this company. Effectively, it bought a company from, about 30 years ago. So it's interesting to see that Microsoft is investing in this kind of technology. Obviously, things have moved along and technology is much better, right? And this changed since 30 years. On the left side, you see, I purchase a lot from Amazon. And I do have to be honest, Amazon is very useful for myself. I order quite a lot from Amazon, especially with the free delivery. But one of the nicest thing on Amazon, according to them, right, is the personalized recommendations. On the left side, you see a couple of items here. The Amazon thinks, maybe you should purchase this. And according to them, it has driven up sales by 35%. I think this is rather interesting, right? So lots of things has changed, right? We've got way more data available. There's much better algorithms available, technology, right? We all now have access to the internet with multiple devices, with agents, interaction with chat clients, Siri, Amazon, also through my TV. So there's a huge change over the past years, right? From a technology point of view, I think the biggest changes here is that linguistics AI is more accessible than ever, right? And from now on, you can also start for free. Means that if you've got, any Azure account, for example, you can start using those AI linguistics technology for a certain amount for free on your subscription. We will look into this later, how to do that. Right. So, a quick summary. Obviously, AI has shifted from something niche, I would say, to something very mainstream. And I think we do have seen that evolution since the last couple of years very strongly, right? We all want to create more value by either providing more customer experience, adding more value to a company, or increasing stock value. And everything has been more accessible than ever, right? So you can start for free nowadays. You don't need too much upfront investment here. And then, the example from purchasing a CD or purchasing computer power, that's basically all done. Nowadays, there's also algorithms available. It's a model for free, which we will also look into this, that you can customize for a fairly small amount of effort. Now, I do think personally that the landscape of AI, especially within Microsoft, is sometimes quite difficult to follow. And I just want to zoom out a little bit in terms of what are we looking at today, right? So there's a huge AI offering within the Microsoft Azure landscape. And within AI services portion, we've got AI document intelligence, right? Where we will extract some structured data. We've got OpenAI service, which is the very famously discussed over the past, I would say, couple of years. This is what we will be looking at today: Azure AI language, right? Natural language processing, text analysis. There's also part with the translation. I think that's quite self-explanatory here. Content safety, search, very useful for RAG integrations here. There's a part with speech, and also quite interesting if you're looking to automate document processing, because you will be looking at scanning photos, recognizing what's happening in the picture, extracting OCR, facial recognition. So that's also useful for automation processing here. Now, AI language, right? This was actually previously part of what has been called Azure Cognitive Services. And still today, some of the documentation is referring to this terminology. But it's actually part of AI, Azure AI suite of AI tools. And it does provide quite a fast time to market, which means that you can rely on those pre-built algorithms or features that's been provided. You can rather easily customize if necessary, without the need of prompt engineering, without the need of development, potentially through Python. And it offers a rather accessible interface through the browser. So these are, from my point of view, the benefits where you can start out. And the capabilities here is kind of as follows, right? So natural language processing, it means that it's able to understand what's being said, emotions, key concepts, and the information, right? It's able to work with more than 100 languages, including dialects. There's a part which offers integration with bots and virtual assistants. It does provide analytics and insights, and I do think this is really a nice feature. We will be looking into this during the slideshow today. Effectively provides feedback on how you can improve the model, how you can make it better, and where things you've made some mistakes with the input and output. So that's a rather interesting feature there, I think. And obviously provides easily integration with the Azure ecosystem and the existing apps, depending how you would like to develop low code, medium code, or pro code. Cool. So a couple of examples, just so we've got a bit of an idea about the business case, right? I'm aware I've explained already a couple of them initially, but these are some of the interesting concepts that you can maybe translate for your business, right? So the first one would be identify specific language of a text. Could be very useful to understand who needs to deal with a specific email, with a specific document, or a specific use case. Summarizing specific text. Determining potentially if a Google review or any review is something positive or negative, and then trigger another flow. Extracting key data information from a specific text, for example, a phone number, medical information, address, date time, or potentially just identifying, hey, what's being said, identify the main concept here. So these are a few examples, and if I actually just open my browser, we will then find a couple of one-to-one matching them with an existing model or feature. So this is what we call available features within AI language, right? I'll try to zoom in slightly here. The first one would be named entity recognition, and in this case, this feature is able to extract specific data from a text, right? So we're looking at product information, duration, address, location, event, date, and a whole set of standardized data types that's being able to extract from a given unstructured text. There's a bit more about health, which I will skip. It's also able to detect the language itself. Sentiment analysis is also a rather interesting one, right? Where we want to understand how positive, neutral, or negative certain things are. Potentially for the Google review. It offers summarization capabilities, right? Key extract information. This would be more about specific words. And the list really goes on. So these are all the predefined features, right? Which allows you to extract, understand, categorize unstructured text into something more structured. Now, if you feel like, this is not sufficient for my business case, and that's also what I had or what we had in the company, because we wanted to extract insurance claim numbers, you can also do a custom feature, right? So the list goes on here, but effectively it talks about custom text classification, custom named entity recognition. So all of this means is that from those predefined features that extract something more custom, right? For example, you know the color of a paint, the car brand, insurance claim number, the list goes on, something that's not being provided by default. You can also train a custom model for that, right? And let's have a look at specifically how this works, because it's actually very straightforward. But I do think the software uses a very specific terminology for this, and it's important that you understand how it works. So the first one is selected data and defined schema, and this means that basically you select a good sample set of data, which you then upload to a storage account, and this is the input from for the model, right? So sample data here in this case. The second step would be labeling the data, which means for every sample set data, you explain, underline, or add what's being expected as an output. And it also means that if you can rinse and repeat that over several documents, effectively, you can train the model, and the model will then understand what you're trying to extract or the purpose from this exercise here, right? So you train the model, which is just a click on the button. The training will be done. There is some statistics there, which you can look at the model performance. We will look at this later as well. And then you can kind of start this feedback loop here, right? So if the model performance is not sufficient for yourself, you can add more documents, make corrections. If you feel like, I'm satisfied with this, you make a release, deploy the model through a REST endpoint, and afterwards you can extract the entities or consume the model here, right? So that's a brief overview of the steps involved, and then we will do this also in the demo. Now, in terms of feedback, I do think there's two very important things that you will need to know. So the first one is the AI model performance, which means right after the training, there will be a statistical score about how good, well, based on the set of information, the model was trained. And how does this specifically work? We are using a split setup, right? So 80% of the data is being sent to the model to be trained. And then 20% of that data is being afterwards used to test against that model, right? So that's a split setup, 80-20, for example. And as we see in the print screen here, there's a bit of, seems to be really good in this case. That's great. Goes on with recommendations here. The second one about feedback and information about how successful it is a confidence score. And a confidence score is effectively a score that ranges between 0 and 100 or 0 and 1. This answer is correct. And obviously, the higher the score, the more confident it is that's correct. And then the lower the score, the less confidence. Now, I do think this is quite important to understand how it works, because it's just based on statistical estimation there, right? And I think it's interesting to use that also in the solution designers. Once you receive the feedback from the AI model, and then how would you like to use that? I always say that if it's about changing the toilet paper in the toilet, maybe the confidence score is not too important because there's no significant impact on your business, right? If it's about paying a claim for an insurance company or doing more something critical, potentially you want to have this as a more confidence score, 95, something higher than that, right? So that's really depending on your business case here. Now, I think as a human, we are pretty good at understanding what kind of information needs to be extracted from a text, right? I did prepare this a little bit as a interactive session, but I'll just present them as such. For example, in this case, we've got an email, and Jonathan wants to, as discussed over the phone, please find pictures of the BMW attached. Now, what's happening here in our minds as a human, we immediately understand the BMW. It means it must be for a car insurance, right? And effectively, the same happens here, right? So we've got some policy number, and Eric is providing an update. If you would be dealing with this email, you will probably look up the policy number in the system, or potentially with the email address, look up what kind of policies Eric has. And the list basically goes on. Even with this, as a human, you immediately understand this must be for a home insurance based on the scope here. And so each of those examples really provide different solutions there. But what we did with the company I used to work for, right, is that the business case was as follows, right? So we had a shared mailbox, and that's typically what's still being used today for lots of insurance companies, basically. There's a mailbox, and clients are emailing them. The mails are being piled up effectively, and there's a couple of full-time employees that are just dragging and dropping, moving around those emails to the different departments. And the reason why we've got different departments and claim handlers in this case is because insurance products are rather complicated and complex, and those claim handlers need to understand every single detail of the policy, right? Which means someone that's able to deal with your home insurance won't be able to deal with your health insurance, for example. So they need to dispatch those emails to specific departments. In this case, we've got 3 departments. It could be much more. So this is what we call it email triage, right? So the goal is really to optimize this, to automate this, to make this more efficient, right? Because what's happening if there is a busy weekend and there's lots of emails, we want to obviously serve clients much faster here, right? That one. I'll skip this one. So we want to use AI Language Studio to manage those claims, and there's basically 2 basic solutions that we can use here to fall back on a couple of items. And I think the first strategy would be to use a high percentage of certainty, which means you want to extract key data from that email, right? So think about the claims number, a reference number, a policy number, or anything else that would be extracted. Now, unfortunately, some people don't provide these references, right? And then you can fall back on email categorization or understanding what's being said, right? So in the sample from the BMW, it's probably car insurance. And if people are speaking about prescription, well, I guess it's more a health-related thing. Could be a GP prescription or something else. So these are 2 options that could be used. But I do think that obviously the limitations are endless, right? So you could be looking at existing claims, new claims, understand the urgency, right? If someone looks to be, really mad, irritated, you could prioritize this email. You could use the sender's email address to see if there's active or closed claims already, or use AI vision to see and view the attachments, or potentially OCR codes on a pre-written document. So there's lots of room for optimization, and there's lots of options there, basically, right? Now let's have a look at how do we translate this into a solution, right? So the first one, extracting the policy number or claims number, in this case, this. Remember when we were scrolling through that specific page here, right? And we were looking at the available features. We had this named entity recognition that was able to extract predefined data. Now, well, it didn't surprise me, but there was no such thing available as an insurance number or insurance policy. I guess that's it. Develop a custom named entity recognition for that, which is then able to extract key data from that unstructured text or email, right? And as we see in the print screen below, right, we've got someone emailing for a fire damage. What we do in the portal is we will just assign the policy number to this email. And I think now it's a really good moment to have a first look on how this effectively works. So if I open my browser here, and let's have a look. I've got a couple of resources here. This, I'm going to zoom in a bit more. Effectively, what's being used is a language resource here, this one, which is nothing more than a container. And then effectively all the work is happening in this language studio itself. This one, yeah, good. So if you go to language.cognitive.azure.com, I've got already 2 projects defined, and the first one would be for the policy number, right? So what I did is I access to AI Language Studio to that storage account, effectively, and then create a new project connected to the storage account, and then it will look at the documents that's being available in that storage account. And these are the sample documents that I've got. In this case, I've got a couple of emails here on the left side. And what I did here is you can then add an entity, for example, policy number, which I already did here. And then you can also underline the specific text and then assign it to a specific label, right? So that's the labeling process. We've got input output that you will be defining here. I'm not too sure why this is policy number. This doesn't seem to be correct. Remove label. So this is basically the steps. And you just rinse. Yeah. So as you see, the policy number is here. And then you rinse and repeat over those things. Now, you can also extract multiple data. For example, if it would be about a specific car number or anything else, or address or dates, then you can also do that here. So it's not only limited to one key data. So that's the first part with the policy numbers that you can use, or insurance numbers, or any reference numbers, basically, or anything else that we used. And then the next step is understanding and categorizing the text, right? And this goes through a fairly similar process, but what we did for this is a custom text classification, right? And why was it, again, a custom? Because there was no such thing available for specific insurance needs here, right? And there's 2 options here, right? So text classification is able to do single layer classification or multi-label classification. The single one means that each document only has one category, and a multi-label means that every document or every input file, unstructured text, contains multiple categories. I think the later one could be an example for movies, right? Where you assign multiple labels to a specific movie. So there's more options there than that. So let's have a look at how this works in the portal from here. And you will recognize that the experience is fairly similar, actually, right? So again, we will be looking at the documents that are uploaded to my existing storage accounts. And then we will put variables here and see what's being Okay, great. So I've got some emails here, some documents here. Again, this is also for some specific, what is it here, a broken arm, right? And on the right side, instead of underlying here, I'm labeling the entire email. So this seems to be health related, as it seems to be for a broken arm. Next one could be a life policy, and then I'm assigning those labels here, right? So there's just, you can add the labels here, assigning it one, and this is just one label for a specific email. So that's the labeling, the process of using my sample data and then assigning it to what I'm expecting from that. So those are the 2 steps. And now let's have a look at a bit more of a solutioning point of view, how this could be used in a kind of software environment, or how you can use that in your solution, right? But first, maybe a small word about integration AI within middleware, right? Because I do come from an integration background, also from on-premise back in the days before Azure existed, I would say. And I do think what we're doing here is enhancing data, right? So we are enriching specific cases, right? By extracting data, by assigning categorizations to existing emails, And I would say if you already have an existing integration between two systems, right, this is a really good opportunity to use AI with this, because you are able to enrich the existing flow, enrich the existing data, and the integration exists already. So that's the first, I would say, low-hanging fruit from that point of view, um, especially if you already have a middleware system. Leverage that to enhance the data that you're sending between two systems here. Now, if we look more specifically about the solution design that we used for email triage, right? We had a mailbox, claims.company.com, and we did had some software to deal with email cases. In this case, it was Dynamics CE. We did send the email or the data to Logic App or an orchestrator, which then kicked off a process of, the first step would be finding the policy number, right? Extracting that key data information. We then had multiple APIs depending on each department to find back if a policy number or claim number is found and who actually owns that policy number. And then if nothing has been found, if no results were there, we do look if there's any, classification found, if we can find the purpose in the department, and then to the system that handled those emails, in this case, Dynamics. Fairly straightforward example, I would say. There's lots of different ways where you can extend this to make this more the needs of your business case or your company. But I think generally you will rely on those two items as well, right? Where we can also extract policy numbers, departments, and then this part, right? Now, maybe before we do the demo, right? So I kind of demonstrate that specific data, but I didn't demonstrate the other possibilities, right? So I would say once that's done, really going on the left, and again, there's no need to develop because it's all in the browser. On the left side, there's training jobs. You can then start a training job. Just enter a model name, for example, a V2. We are again looking at the split setup here, so 80-20, for example, and then you can click on train. A couple of minutes or potentially hours later, once that's all finished, you will see that a model has been available here. Just need to look at, okay, here's the model performance. That's it. That was what I was looking for. So looking at the performance score, and these are rather interesting items, right? I did only upload, 19 documents, so the score is not too great, but there's already some data that we can use for testing, right? So immediately there's a complaint about there's not enough data sets. It seems to be that I need to upload more documents, so that's useful feedback. It seems to be unbalanced because some of the categorizations have more, and there seems to be lots of nice used value. But really, if you look at, for example, confusion matrix, you can really dig deeper in kind of normal others values, as well as, all the other tabs. So this one is feedback for whoever trains the model, as in, hey, we do think, you can do this in order to improve it. Let's say you're happy, you want to release the model. That's just exposing the model through REST endpoints. And from there, I would say you're good to go. Now, looking at a little bit more of a demo setup, right? Let's see if we can go back to my resource group, right? I did set up a couple of samples with a Logic app here. And the first thing that I want to do is a bit more basic, right? Let's see if we can do some language detection here. So for those who are not familiar with Logic app, it is a low-code enterprise-ready integration platform, or more of an orchestration platform, which allows you to, in this case, I've set up a REST endpoint. It works with connectors that are predefined, basically, and then it allows me to connect to that AI language as itself, right? So it will then send that same request to AI language, and it will reply me the response here. So this is just a rather big proxy, I would say. Nothing too complicated. Yeah, I'm not too sure. So let's see how we can then look at the demo to extract some of that data to see if we can do language detection. Let's see if we can kind of simulate this one here. So the hello, how are you, buddy? And this is then the reply that's fairly certain that it's English, and why there's a confidence score of 0.9. Obviously, what happens is that if you're using shorter texts, then if I figured out, it doesn't seem to be too certain. But what I did notice is that, for example, if we are trying to confuse it a little bit with some Spanish, I expect it to drop, right? Even if we kind of send some typos, I expect to drop it even further, but it still seems to be fairly confident that this is English. Again, it's a very short text. I noticed the performance is definitely useful. So this is also something we used for agents, right? So specifically in a country where you deal with multiple languages or kind of enterprise integration, extracting that language then also allows you to route it to specific agents. Someone that is able to deal with Spanish customers, or someone that is able to deal with English customers, for example. So that's this part for a small demo for the language. Now, a little bit more about the setup of what we can use with email triage, right? And here we have a bit more of a basic orchestration, right? So again, it's a REST endpoint that I exposed here. No, yeah. And what are we doing? We receive a HTTP request, and the first part is that integration with the policy number, right? So we use that. We just simply forward the email to the AI language REST endpoint. Second step is, hey, is there any policy number found? Is there anything present? If not, then we want to rely on that department extraction, right? And again, we do something very similar here. We just send the entire email for the sake of demoing to that part. And if everything is found, we just reply that to the client. Obviously a demo, but in reality, you could use something more asynchronous, put the message on the service bus, then which picks it up and then sends it, send it back to your ERP system. You can also expose this to your ERP system as a service, right? So let's have a look at how we can do a little bit more about emails. In this case, we've got an email from Charlotte, right? So she's asking about stolen electronics, about her home that was burglarized, with some specifics. So I'm a little bit more interested into seeing how we can extract data from this email. And indeed, we were able to extract a specific policy number here, right? So that's the policy number. Now, Charlotte was, well, I would say a very nice customer, because she also mentioned it in a very nice way. Hello, my policy number is, which is nice. I would be a bit more interested to see in what's the confidence score and what do we receive? Right? What are we expecting here? So looking back at that, it was indeed able to extract a text and say, hey, this is the policy number that we are looking for, specifically around the position in the text, but also a confidence score of 1. Oh, I've never seen that one, a 1. So it seems to be 100% sure that this is indeed the policy number for this specific email. Interesting. So this is what we received. Now, this is obviously also an orchestration. So, it was happy. It did send back the policy number there. Second case that we can kind of run through is, again, we've got a fairly similar email, but in this case, no policy was given. But she understands it, right? Again, about her burglarized home and her electronics. This time it seems to understand that it's for non-life. Now, non-life in insurance terms means also home insurance, right? So again, what happened here? Let's have a look at this orchestration that we defined. The first part was unable to extract specific, specific key data. Indeed, no entities were found, absolutely nothing, which in that case went back to the second one. Looking at the output here, and then I might zoom in slightly more. Nope. We can see that indeed non-life or home insurance was assigned as a categorization for this email. Confidence score not too high, I would say 0.4. I know the reason. I only uploaded 3 documents with non-life to my training set, so very, very, very small sample set, which also yielded into a very low confidence score. But it's nice to see, and I would say surprising to see that even with very limited amount of data, it's still able to understand the intent of the email here or extract that information. Cool. So that's kind of the demo for this part. Now, I always try to kind of challenge the things a little bit. And I was wondering, hey, what happens if people send more of a confusing email? Because in reality, this doesn't happen every day. But in this case, we've got someone that is referring to an invoice from a doctor's consultant. It seems to be a typo here. But she's also asking if she needs a fast car to drive to her appointment. So a couple of observations here. There's a typo within doctor, and there's a fast somehow car, and there's drive. As a matter of fact, there's more words to non-health in this email than to health. It's also able to understand the intent of the email and able to see what's being said. Now, to be honest, this is a very confusing email, right? So if I was if I was there, if I would be reading this email, I would be equally confused. But I do think we all kind of understand that, this is more for a doctor's consult invoice, that she's asking questions there, or that she's referring. So it seems to be more for health related concern or health department for the insurance company here. So yeah, that's an interesting case, I would say. I do think there's later also an option to ask a bit more questions and being interactive. And I do invite you guys, if you want to play around with this, feel free. I'm happy to kind of change this demo here as well, and to see if we can kind of mess around with this or not. Interestingly enough, I'm kind of curious to see how this, the confidence score was in this part. What are we expecting? Because I'm not expecting such a high confidence score, especially for the department. Considering there was some confusion, even myself, I was confused when I wrote this email. Again, I'm not trying to provide a perfect demo sample, but also trying to, see how things are going. And indeed, the confidence score even dropped more, right? So it was indeed the health insurance that was assigned with a very low confidence score, 0.35. So that's for the demo part effectively here. This part. If you feel like using this or trying it out, I highly recommend trying it out and play around with this yourself for multiple benefits. As I've explained before, it's a very fast time to market that you can use, and especially with the free tier, it allows you to do 5,000 text extractions or records free per month. So that's great if you want to start out and play around, especially with an MVP version that you want to do. Otherwise, it's just a pay-as-you-go model. You are charged per every 1,000 calls. However, the pricing depends heavily. So since we've got a little bit of more time, I think we can also have a look at AI language services pricing. We can also look at the pricing here, and the reason why, well, obviously, this might change. I'm well aware of the video is recorded. But just to point out that there's a couple of price differences if you have a look at, right? For example, the sentiment analysis, right? They are charged, in this case, up to $1 for one amount. In this case, for health, it seems to be more expensive. Text classification also seems to be more expensive. So I would say pick your battles in terms of what you want to use first. And especially, there's a huge difference between those two. Obviously, the use case is very different, but there's also a very huge, very big difference between this and, for example, this, because we are starting off with different prices, and the reason why this is very different is because what we've seen in this demo is a custom model. Now they are charged more expensive per usage, but you will also see that they are slower. I wouldn't say slower in terms of it takes minutes, but the performance from a text, they are cheaper, but they also perform faster. So my recommendation is to use those if possible, and then potentially have a look at kind of a backup that you can use. Do we really need to use those custom models? And what kind of business value, you still want to have return on investment, right? The training is charged per hour, but I didn't really notice too much expenses over there, but personally, especially the training is more like a one-off, and then you go through those cycles. Normally, the biggest expense will be for the charging itself and the usage. There's a little bit of endpoint hosting, but it's fairly small. And then there's some commitment tiers available as well for large customers, right? Now, I do recommend, if you feel like playing around with this, there's a very, very good demos, setups available under learn.microsoft.com. There's lots of stuff. Looking back at the other options, there's also some more of here, which also training material that you can use. So heavily recommend using this website here, or at least this category. And so we are ending the session here. I think there is a little bit of Q&A in a separate link. But I do welcome all the questions, of course. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting. It was really, really interesting, I think. And also, I appreciated also the links that you gave to more information if someone is interested in trying these things out. So, right
Thank
now,
you.
right now we don't have so many questions here, but as I described here in the beginning, we will have a short Zoom meeting for those who would like to ask questions directly here. So let me just find the QR code and also the link. Let me post the link here in the chat. So this is the link here to our Zoom meeting. So, and also just out of interest, can our viewers see you on stage? Are you presenting at any conference or meetup here in the near future?
I do have a couple of things lined up. Well, not this month, but then next month I'll be in Sofia for Global AI Day. And then the weekend afterwards, I'll be in Poland for SQL Day as well for a presentation. That one. So that's the schedule for, I would say, the next month. A couple of more presentations. Feel free to join in and tune in. I'm not coming to Sweden yet, but it's on my schedule. So hopefully very soon indeed. Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, then I thank you so much for your session, and also thank you to our audience if you watch this live or if you're watching it on the recorded stream on YouTube. So I wish you all a very happy weekend and see you in our next session.